Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode, we're reviewing WrestleMania 40. And I am going to combine both nights into one review. It is going to be a little bit of a longer review because of that. It just made it much easier to do it this way with all the different shows that went on over the weekend between WWE, NXT, GCW, Stardom, Ring of Honor, all of the stuff we got to watch as wrestling fans. It felt like even with that, there was not enough time to watch everything. So with that being said, I condensed this into one review. It is going to be a longer review. If you haven't seen my shows before, I rate everything on a 1 to 5 scale. 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Let's jump right in. We start off night 1 with Coco Jones singing America the Beautiful, and she did a great job here. I mentioned in a review I did recently of WrestleMania 10 where Little Richard kind of did a gospel spin on it, and Coco Jones kind of had a similar gospel spin on the theme, but where Little Richard failed, Coco Jones succeeded. I think it was a great version. It was absolutely beautiful. I loved it. Then we go right into our first match of the night for the Raw Women's Championship. We get Rhea Ripley defending against Becky Lynch. And right off the bat, Rhea comes out and she's there with Motionless in white, and they're singing her to the ring, and her and Chris Motionless have a couple moments where it kind of looks like they're brother and sister. I never realized how much they resemble each other until they got on screen together. And some of that's on purpose, some of that is the style of clothing and makeup that they both wear. Some of it is just the structure of their faces. That was absolutely awesome. Becky Lynch comes out and she's very much themed in her autobiography. She has like pages of her book all over her gear. It looked amazing. I'm going to say this probably a million times through here. A lot of the gear over the 2 days looked amazing, so if I don't mention it, it's not that it looked bad, it's just that some of them stick out more than others. Becky Lynch went into the match. From what I understand, she had strep throat and 102 degree fever, so kudos to her for giving the performance she did. I thought this was a really great opener for night 1, and if I'm being honest, it's probably one of my 2 favorites on night 1, which we'll talk about night 1 a little bit when we get to the end of it, more as a whole. I'm going to give this one a 4. I thought it was a really good match. Next up, we have a 16 ladder match for both the Raw and SmackDown Tag Team Championships. We get Judgment Day, Finn Balor and Damian Priest going up against DIY, Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano versus The Awesome Truth, R-Truth and Miz versus The New Day, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods versus A-Town Down Under, Austin Theory and Grayson Waller versus New Catch Republic, Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate. And yeah, that was a lot to say. And the structure of this was both tag titles were hung, and the team that grabs each title becomes a champion, so they're splitting the championships up here. I think this was a match that was a lot better in concept, and I kind of feel like as a whole, WWE has painted themselves into this, we have to have a ladder match on WrestleMania. And I get why they do some of these. A lot of this, I mean, obviously you get 12 wrestlers on the WrestleMania card to make a payoff, which is always good. But this probably worked better in theory than in concept. Because for one thing, Theory and Waller win the SmackDown Championships kind of early in the match, and then that's almost an afterthought. So almost immediately after winning a championship, their championship becomes a secondary championship because of the struggle for the Raw tag titles, which made their accomplishment seem less. I don't know if I'm the only person that felt that way, but I did definitely feel that way because by the end of the match, I almost forgot that Theory and Waller had won early in the match. There was a lot of, your normal crazy spots, people going through tables, jumping off ladders. Damian Priest at one point is climbing a ladder that looks like it's going to totally break because the bottom's broken off. Referee Jessica Carr tries to save him, but he shrugs her off. Ultimately, we get a feel-good moment when The Miz and R-Truth get to the top and get the Raw Tag Team Championships, which again, kind of overshadows Theory and Waller's tag title win in the same match. I thought this was good. Again, like I said, I think it was better in concept than it was in reality. I'm going to give this one a 3. Next up, we have a match, Rey Mysterio and Andrade going up against Santos Escobar and Dominic Mysterio. And it's kind of weird how they shoehorned Andrade and Dominic in here because we already have LWO members. They could have used Carlito, which I think they're building to something there where Carlito's going to turn heel. Or they could have used any of Legado del Fantasma to team with Santos. They didn't really have to bring these outside entities in. I understand why they did that way. Andrade and Mysterio are bigger stars than we have in either group, and you get to see the groups both get involved outside, so that makes sense. But as far as storyline wise, and I know Dominic and Rey have the ongoing never-ending feud, but I don't know. It didn't take away from the quality of the match. I actually enjoyed this match quite a bit. Then we get towards the end of it, and two giant masked men jump from the crowd, and I knew right away who one of them was because they both had like somewhat Rey Mysterio-esque Philadelphia Eagles masks, which, shout out to WrestleMania, they did a lot of Philadelphia Eagle branding within the show. The green color was all over everybody almost, and there was a lot of shout outs to the city. New Day dressed up as Apollo and Rocky. I wonder if Xavier Woods just used his old Austin Creed stuff from TNA. But I digress. Back to this. The two giant men unmasked. One is Jason Kelsey, which I knew he had to be involved in this WrestleMania. I mean, it made so much sense. He's the face of the Philadelphia Eagles. He just retired. He's so beloved within both football and the entertainment world. And the other is Lane Johnson, who is a future Hall of Fame offensive lineman for the Philadelphia Eagles. Both of these guys are going to walk into the Hall of Fame. I'm a huge Philadelphia Eagles fan, so I am very familiar with both these guys and all of their accomplishments. Multiple-time Pro Bowlers, world champions. I mean, they're just great. So to some people, they may have taken away from the match and made it overbooked. To me, they spoke to me. Rey and Andrade pick up the win here. I'm giving this match a 4. I added a little bit because of the Eagles' involvement, and it may just be my pure fandom. I gotta give it what I honestly feel. Next up is probably, for me, the most disappointing match of the weekend, and it's one that I went into with a lot of hope. It was one of the matches I most wanted to see during the weekend, and that's Jey Uso versus Jimmy Uso. First, Jey comes to the ring being wrapped out by Lil Wayne, which he kind of was weird that he stopped and they went to Jay's normal music. They should have just let him do one of Wayne's songs, but I digress. And speaking of that, Meek Mill started the show, which you can't be more Philly than Meek Mill. He's the most Philly rapper there is right now. This match had the potential for me to think of it as a great. And the thing I could compare it to, they seem to do this once every 15 years at WrestleMania. WrestleMania 10, we had Bret versus Owen Hart. WrestleMania 25, we had Jeff versus Matt Hardy. WrestleMania 40, we get Jey versus Jimmy Uso. Now, out of the first two matches, Bret and Owen, classic match, it's still talked about to this day, still one of my favorite WrestleMania matches. Jeff and Matt, not so much. Kind of falls like this match did. I like the Usos. I like them both as solo wrestlers. I love them as a tag team. They're one of the best tag teams of the last decade and a half. Jey Uso has proven that he could be a main event talent. Jimmy has proven that he could be a solid solo wrestler. I think once the bloodline breaks up, we'll get to see more of him and more of his evolution as a solo wrestler. This wasn't it. And this is going to sound weird coming from a guy that loves the Young Bucks and likes the silliness and sometimes over super kick nature of their matches when they do it as a troll. This kind of felt like both guys were in a WWE 2K24 match and they found the super kick button and they got it stuck and that's all they could do. I don't know, it just didn't do it for me. And I know there's a lot of people, I felt the sentiment going through on Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it now, that felt the same way. Ultimately, Jey picks up the win here. Also kind of surprised that Solo didn't get involved and that we had Rikishi there for the weekend. We seen him at the Hall of Fame. He should have at least been shown in the crowd. I mean, this is his two sons wrestling each other. I do like the story beat of Jimmy trying to use Jay's compassion against him and it not working. I like that as a story beat, but overall I thought the match was underwhelming. Like I said, Jey Uso picks up the win here. I'm giving this one a 2. That's followed up with our 6-woman tag team match. We get Damage Control, Asuka, Dakota Kai, and Kairi Sane going up against Bianca Belair, Naomi, and Jade Cargill. And let me just say this. This to me was probably one of my favorite entrances and definitely my favorite entrance of night one. Bianca and Jade and Naomi look like $1 billion together. Even watching them in the press conference afterwards, you could feel the camaraderie. You could feel the fact that they seem to be really good friends, or at least they can pretend really well that they're good friends. You could see that they genuinely like being out there with each other and they're having fun, which makes the match more fun. Jade, I'm going to say this again, I've said it a million times. She absolutely looks like a megastar. Her branding is basically she's Storm from the X-Men, and she looks like Storm from the X-Men. If they do decide to recast Storm and go with a younger person, I don't think it would be a bad idea to cast Jade in that role. She absolutely looks like it. She looks amazing. I mean, not saying that Bianca and Naomi don't, they do. Bianca is one of the top women wrestlers in all of the world right now, and having Jade in there with someone like Bianca, with Naomi, who's probably the most underrated wrestler of the last decade, and that's on either side of the coin, and being in there with great talent like Asuka, Kairi Sane, and Dakota Kai, this is going to help supercharge her career and get her where she needs to be a lot quicker than anybody else, really. This was a fun match. I rather enjoyed this. Bianca, Jade, and Naomi pick up the win here. I'm giving this one a 3. Next up, we have our Intercontinental Championship match. Gunther versus Sami Zayn in a David versus Goliath match. Basically, the unstoppable Gunther versus the ultimate underdog Sami Zayn. I really enjoyed this match, and these two wrestlers are two of the best wrestlers in all of WWE. I mean, let's just face it, I don't think I've ever seen a bad Gunther match, and I haven't seen many bad Sami Zayn matches either. Sami has that quality where you could put him in absolute anything, whether it be a serious match against Gunther, a blood feud against Roman Reigns, a crazy, silly gimmick like against Johnny Knoxville, and he pulls off all of it, and he pulls it all off great. I really enjoyed this match. The only thing that I'm sad about is I kind of wish that Gunther just kept the championship forever, because it was such a great run. I mean, he beat the Honky Tonk Man's record. If you look at it, even if you add up everybody else's runs together, his one run trumps everybody else's combined runs. I mean, this was just really fun. I really enjoyed this. Sami Zayn did pick up the win here. I'm giving this one a 4. Then we go on to the main event of the night, what is being billed as the biggest tag team match in WrestleMania history. I don't know. I know the stakes are higher than any other tag team match, unless you consider the World Tag Titles as being a higher stake. But would this be a bigger match than Hogan and Mr. T versus Piper and Orndorff? Piper and Orndorff versus Hogan and T start the whole thing. I mean, that's pretty damn important if you ask me. We get the Bloodline, The Rock and Roman Reigns going up against Seth Rollins and Cody Rhodes. The story of this is, if Seth and Cody can win, the Bloodline will not be involved in the next night's main event. If The Rock and Roman win, it's Bloodline rules, which this match kind of devolved into Bloodline rules. The Rock used his influence and his final boss character to kind of bully the referee into letting them do whatever they wanted. This was actually a better match than I expected, and a lot of that lands squarely on the shoulders of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. I didn't expect Dwayne to have this good of a match. His last run, his last few matches, they just weren't up to this level, and that's no knock on him. The guy is older, and he's been out of wrestling for over a decade now and hasn't actually wrestled a match in that long, so I didn't expect much of him. However, he put in the work. He had to have had a grueling quote-unquote fight camp to get to where he was in this match. And I'm not saying that this match was the best work rate match of all time. However, for a guy that doesn't do this normally, to go out there and put on 45 minutes with 3 of the best wrestlers in the world and not look like you're an albatross, not look like you're the outlier in the group, that says a lot to me. I really enjoyed this match. I felt like there was a bit of it being anticlimactic, because we all know that the Bloodline was going to win to set up one more hurdle for Cody Rhodes. which obviously the Bloodline did win. I really enjoyed this. I thought this was fun. Like I said, The Rock, say what you want to say about him being a part-timer, say what you want to say about him taking somebody else's spot. I mean, if this is The Rock we're going to get, I want to see The Rock. That's basically my opinion on it. I mean, this final boss version of The Rock has been amazing. And this is coming from a guy that's a mega Cody Rhodes fan. He just has been a great villain. This was an awesome match. I absolutely love it. I'm giving it a 4. Overall, for night 1, I think it's the lesser of the 2 nights, and you'll see that as I get into my ratings for night 2. I don't think it was a bad show. I think it was a good show. There wasn't that one, like, really great breakout all-time WrestleMania moment. Rhea and Becky had a really good match. The tag team main event was really good. But when we look at it in the grand scheme of things, are either of those matches going to be remembered as all-time greats? Is the Rhea-Becky match better than the Rhea vs. Charlotte match from last year, which I think was one of the best matches of the entire year? Is that tag match better than any other main event or other similar main events? This came off at least night 1 as a really good pay-per-view, not a really good WrestleMania. With that being said, I really did enjoy it. There's a lot that I've seen, a lot of discourse about the crowd being quiet, and I think a lot of it was just very cold outside, and they're in an outdoor stadium, and it was very windy, so it was hard for the mics to pick up the people yelling there. I'm going to say, for night 1, I'm giving the show a 4. My least favorite match of the whole 2 nights was on here, that being Jay and Jimmy. Sorry, guys. I love you guys. I wish you had a better match, though. Now, let's move on to night 2. This is the night that I feel made WrestleMania feel like WrestleMania. We start off with War and Treaty giving us a rendition of God Bless America, and I want to say this is our second WrestleMania that they've done this at. They're just fantastic. I absolutely love what they did with it here. That leads us right into one of our first big surprises of the night, and it may have been a lesser surprise since we've seen her at the Hall of Fame and prominently mentioned at the Hall of Fame by Paul Heyman, which, what a great performance, what a great speech by Paul at the Hall of Fame. The one thing, and I think I'm far enough into my video that it won't get demonetized here, that he said, and it got bleeped, but I seen the unedited version, it resonates with me, and I'll get back to the show in a moment. I know I'm digressing, and I'm probably not exactly quoting it, but this is basically the gist of it. If you think ECW died in a bankruptcy court in 2001, you could suck my motherfucking dick. As an ECW fan, hearing that and hearing how he explained and how being someone that watched it knows this and could see it with his own eyes, how much the wrestling world was influenced by that company, man, that just made it felt so good to hear words like that. Being the ECW guy, being ECW diehard, it's just great. I digress. Back to Stephanie. Stephanie McMahon is a surprise. She fills the role that Triple H did on the first night. Did I mention that Triple H announced the Are You Ready thing? Anyway, if I didn't, Triple H announced the first night, kind of in the old role that Vince McMahon did. For night 2, Stephanie came out. It was great to see her here. I don't know how involved she's going to be in these lawsuits, if she's part of it, if she's not part of it. There are some stories that paint her in a less than favorable fashion, especially when we talk about the Ashley Massaro stuff, which we won't touch here, but I don't think she's as complacent. I think she may have known that it was Vince's girlfriend, but not known the extent of the depravity. I'm just saying, I hope that's the truth. I hope that's it, because, yeah, just because I don't want more people drugged down into this mess. Anyway, back to the show. The first match of night 2, we get Seth freaking Rollins defending his WWE Championship against Drew McIntyre. Drew comes out with a Scottish bagpipe band. CM Punk is on commentary, and he did a great job here. He crapped all over Drew McIntyre all of the night, which is obvious that's going to be his first feud when he comes back. Seth Rollins found a way to one-up him, even in the entrance. He came out with the Mummers, which, if you're not familiar, the Mummers is a tradition in Philadelphia every New Year's. Basically, that string band that you've seen with those outlandish costumes. They run a parade every New Year's Day, the Mummers Parade. It's one of the big events in Philadelphia every year. It's just a fantastic thing. Someone that grew up in the area, I absolutely love seeing the Mummers, so that was just amazing. This was a really, really good match. This is probably my second favorite match of the whole weekend. I really enjoyed this. I mean, you got two top-level wrestlers. Drew McIntyre is on a different level than he's been any other time in his career. And Seth Rollins, what a wrestler, what a guy. Seth, to me, is kind of the Randy Orton of this generation, where he's a top-level guy, but may not be considered the guy like Roman was, or like in Randy's day, Cena was. But you could always count on him to put on great matches, be a credible champion, and this was no exception. He looked great here. There's a lot of back and forth with Drew being distracted by CM Punk, which comes in a little bit later. Ultimately, McIntyre picks up the win, getting to win the World Championship in front of a live crowd, which is awesome. You can see Seth Rollins mouthing to him that he deserves it as he leaves, and I won't say what he actually said because I already used my one F-bomb that I'm probably going to use earlier. As Drew is celebrating, he's paying too much attention to CM Punk and trying to gloat too much in the face of CM Punk. CM Punk has too much of it and decides he's going to do something. He attacks Drew McIntyre, starts beating him down. Then we hear Damian Priest's music, and out come running Damian Priest. He cracks McIntyre in the head with the Money in the Bank briefcase and demands they restart it and start the match for the World Championship right now. So then we go right into Priest versus McIntyre, which I kind of thought might happen here. I had a feeling that Priest was going to hold off all the way till Money in the Bank, so I was a little bit pleasantly surprised in this. Priest does pick up the win, which fantastic. I think he deserves it. I love seeing new wrestlers or new main event stars get chances to run with it. I'll love to see what he's going to do here. I know because I watched the press conferences, they asked him about this being the Workhorse Championship, and he mentioned that if you look back last year for 2023, he had the most TV matches and the second most matches of anybody on the roster, so he's willing to carry that heavy load. I expect we'll see a lot of Priest defending on Raw until they decide to take this championship from him, which I think it's probably going to be pretty obvious that it's going to go down in Clash at the Castle, if not before then. He'll probably lose it to Drew McIntyre there, maybe in a three-way dance, but who knows. For all of this, the match, the cash-in, the Punk involvement, I'm giving this a 5. I thought it was really, really good. That's followed up with our Philadelphia Street Fight. We get the Pride, or are they even being called the Pride? I think they were called that like once and then never again. Bobby Lashley, the Street Profits, Angelo Dawkins, Montez Ford with B-Fab. They're going up against Karrion Kross with Akam and Razor, the Authors of Pain. They have with them Scarlett and Paul Ellering. The surprise here is we have Bubba Ray Dudley as the referee, Snoop Dogg on commentary, which Snoop did a great job. He was hilarious. This match, to me, it kind of was their tribute to ECW in a way, and where I think this worked as a multi-person kind of, I guess you could say, garbage match, where the ladder match on night one didn't, is it didn't feel like they were doing spots just to do spots. It felt like everything had a meaning. It felt like there was more into this, and that could just be because they've had a pretty decent storyline going into this. I rather enjoyed this match. Lashley and the Street Profits pick up the win here. I'm giving this one a 4. Next up, we have the Battle of the Initials. LA Knight, yeah, versus AJ Styles. I know, that was terrible. It's probably my worst LA Knight impression I've ever done, which says something because usually they're pretty bad. I thought this was a really good match. I think this might be LA Knight's best match on the main roster. And how could it not be? You're in there with a guy that's an all-time great in AJ Styles. I mean, he's cemented a legacy in 4 different companies where he may be considered a Hall of Famer for all 4. I know he's going to be considered a TNA Hall of Famer. He's probably going to be a WWE Hall of Famer. He might be a Ring of Honor Hall of Famer, which I think he deserves because he did a lot of great things in Ring of Honor. And hell, even though he was only there for a short time, the impact he made in New Japan Pro Wrestling can't be understated. I'm a big AJ fan. My favorite run of AJ's career was AJ as a leader of the Bullet Club. The matches and the stories he was doing there, it really elevated the Bullet Club, which were already on a high standing with what Finn Balor did before him, but it took it to a whole nother level when AJ came in and he was the leader of the Bullet Club. I think that's probably, in my opinion, if I think back about it, the best time of the Bullet Club. I think they were at their absolute apex there. And not to say that the different runs with Omega or Jay White as the leader, or even now with Finlay as the leader, have been bad. It's just that AJ was on a different level for that. I think it was just a bit over a year he was there. AJ and LA Knight put on a great match here. LA Knight ultimately wins. I'm giving this one a 4. Next up, we have our obligatory Hall of Fame members coming out to say hi to the crowd, basically. We get the U.S. Express, Bull Nakano, Thunderbolt Patterson. He had a great speech as well. The U.S. Express, their speech was good, but it was very emotional, especially the Bray stuff. Leah Maivia, who was represented by her daughter Ada, and then the wise man, Paul Heyman, which he came out to the ECW theme. How great is it to hear the ECW theme at WrestleMania? Again, fanboying here. Just fantastic. I mean, he's Paul. He's one of the greatest minds in the history of wrestling. That's followed up with our U.S. Championship match. We get Logan Paul defending against Kevin Owens and Randy Orton. This was another match I just really liked. I mean, these three have put on a great feud, especially since it seemed more of like a tag team feud with Owens and Orton going up against Logan Paul with Grayson Waller and Austin Theory. But when it came down to it and the titles on the line, both Orton and Owens were willing to go against each other. I really enjoyed this match, and the more Logan Paul is in a wrestling ring, the more I forget everything else that Logan Paul did, and that's not saying that I don't enjoy some of the stuff he's done. I won't say I enjoy it all. I really like his impulsive podcast. I don't catch it all the time, but I do catch it, and when there is someone I enjoy there, I think he does a great job there. I'm not a fan of some of his older content. It just didn't speak to me, but I don't outright hate the guy. I didn't put any money into CryptoZoo, so I don't have any bad feelings about that. Ultimately, the Prime Bottle gets involved again. This time it's iShowSpeed, which a lot of people, if you're not watching YouTube, you don't know who he is, but he's a big YouTuber. He gets involved. He eats an RKO on a table that doesn't break, which looked pretty harsh. Kudos to him for taking that spot. Ultimately, Logan Paul finds a way to pull out the win here. I thought this was really good. I really enjoyed this. I'm giving this a 4. And as you can see, I'm enjoying more of Night 2 already before we even get into the 2 quote-unquote main event matches than I did on Night 1. With that being said, we have our SmackDown Women's Championship match. Io Sky defending against Bayley, and I'm unabashedly a Bayley fan. I've been a Bayley fan for a very, very long time. Ever since I first seen her in NXT, I thought she was great. I thought she was the next big baby face for WWE, which she had become, and then she became the next great heel in WWE off of that, which her heel character is even better than her face character, which brought her back around to being a face again with this Damage Control storyline. This was fantastic. I absolutely love this match. I mean, you got two of the premier women wrestlers in the world again. I like this better than I liked the Rhea Ripley Becky Lynch match on Night 1. I think the story was better going into this, the whole Damage Control story. The payoff was better. I think Bayley coming back to the light side, coming back to fans, coming back to where she's loved. I think that was a great story. Bayley did pick up the win here. I'm giving this one a 5. Then we get the match that everybody's waiting for, the rematch from WrestleMania 39. Roman Reigns defending his Universal Championship against Cody Rhodes. And God, these entrances were great. Both Romans and Cody's. Roman with the orchestra, Cody with Brandy coming out. Wow, what a great surprise. And the crowd popped huge for Brandy. I hope she sticks around more. I like a lot of what Brandy did in AEW. Yeah, there were some cringe moments. The Nightmare Collective, that stuff was a little bit cringe. But some of even her bad stuff was good. Her open mic night bitch is one of my favorite segments on AEW. And it's just great. It's just Brandy being Brandy. I would love to see more of her, even if it's just in Cody's main event, premium live event fights. She needs to be there because she adds so much to the table. This match, we knew how it was going to go down. It's Bloodline rules, so we know at some point the Bloodline's going to get involved, because even when it's not Bloodline rules, the Bloodline gets involved. The story here is much like last year. Every time Cody tries to get the win, another Bloodline member comes out. First it's Jimmy Uso, who gets chased off and fought with Jey Uso, and they took a crazy bump off of the entrance ramp. Then we get Solo Sikoa, who comes out, and he's matched with John Cena, which was another surprise, even though He'd been heavily rumored to be on the show. More on the rumors here in a moment. Then we get the final boss, The Rock, coming out, which brings out the Shield music, which had Seth. And for a split moment before they showed Seth, I kind of thought that maybe they worked out a deal to get Moxley. I don't want to criticize this that much because overall I thought it was highly enjoyable, but I don't know if you should play the Shield music unless you have all three members of the Shield, or if you're doing something like Roman versus Seth and Seth is doing mind games against Roman like last year. So there was that. I mean, not a horrible misstep, but Seth comes out in his Shield gear with the chair, which is the original sin, which is the original reason why Roman Reigns is so untrusting and so great of a character, if you ask me. Because I feel like a lot of his tribal chief and acknowledging him character is predicated on the fact that he can't trust his friends and he can't even trust his family. I feel like that was in the back of his head, and it comes into play a little bit later in the match. He gets run off. The Rock looks like he's going to hit the rock bottom, and then we hear the gong. And The Undertaker appears. And the rumor was that Steve Austin was going to be there, which is what I was mentioning earlier with Cena. I don't know if that was ever planned, or if it was and plans changed, or whatever that may be, or Austin just said no. I think Undertaker kind of didn't fit here. You could stretch it to WrestleMania 33 where Roman beat The Undertaker and said that it's his yard now, as maybe a ghost of the Bloodline Past, which is kind of what I felt they were doing here, was ghosts of Bloodline Past. I mean, Cena had his whole thing with Solo last year. Obviously, Seth Rollins has had his thing. I don't know how it tied in, but seeing The Undertaker at WrestleMania, I'm not really going to complain about that. This all leads to Cody Rhodes finally finishing the story. Cody Rhodes picks up the win here in what I could say in the most positive way. This was an overbooked mess, but in a very, very good way. This was like Mankind beating The Rock for the World Championship. That was an overbooked mess, but it was so cathartic and so great, and that's how this felt here. This was so cathartic, and him exercising the demons of the Bloodline, being the guy that finally had a counter to all of the Bloodline shenanigans, that was just great. There was a moment that I forgot to mention where Roman has a chair and he has a chance to either hit Cody Rhodes or hit Seth Rollins, and he goes for Seth due to his hubris as a payback. Wow, that was just great. I absolutely loved every part of this. Is this the greatest match of all time? No. But the spectacle of it and what was accomplished here and the story being told was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. I'm giving this one a 7. I know I said I only go to 5, but we're going to do what Meltzer does and we're going to break it and go a little bit higher. I enjoyed everything afterwards, with Brandy coming out, with Mama Rhodes coming into the ring and him handing the belt to her like he said he wanted to, Cody crying, grabbing the microphone and asking Triple H and Bruce Pritchard to come out. What a great touch. All the baby faces coming out, Owens and Zayn and CM Punk, all the people that helped him through his career, Randy Orton, John Cena. Even -1 was in there, which is awesome, because I think -1 is somewhat under AEW contract, or he has an AEW contract waiting for him when he turns 18, whatever they said it was back a few years ago. It's so cool to see him there, and I know there's a lot of tribalism between AEW and WWE. I hope there's no bad feelings for that. I kind of wish they would have let Dustin be here. I know it's probably something contractually, which I get it, but it would have been nice to see Dustin here as well. Don't get me wrong, what they did was still really good. This was worth it. This was worth the disappointment of WrestleMania 39, especially for a Cody fan like myself. It added so much to the story. And kudos to Roman Reigns. The Bloodline story is going to go down in the annals of history as one of the great storylines in all of pro wrestling. It's going to be up there with Sting versus the NWO, the Mega Powers exploding, Bruno versus Zbyszko, the Von Erichs versus the Freebirds, Raven versus Tommy Dreamer, which I think is the greatest of all time, by the way, the Midnight Express and Rock and Roll Express. This story is going to go right there with all of them. It's so good. And kudos to Roman. You really, really set the bar really high for Cody. Cody needs to take this ball and run with it, and I think he's going to. I think he's absolutely going to run with this. Overall, I'm going to give Night 2 a 5. I enjoyed it. I think it was the better of the two nights, in my opinion, and I think that's the general sentiment. And overall, for both nights, since night 2 was so good, I'm going to give it all a 5. I think if you played this all from top to bottom, you would have a lot of enjoyment. You'd probably be really tired because I think it's like 8 hours of wrestling. When you add in all the other stuff like Ring of Honor, shout outs to Mark Briscoe for winning the Ring of Honor World Championship. Shout out to Billy Starks for winning the Women's TV Championship there. Or all the GCW stuff. I haven't even got to watch Joey Janela's Spring Break yet. I'm going to probably watch it sometime after editing this video or while I'm editing this video. The Stardom stuff that went down this weekend. This was just a nice, great weekend for wrestling fans. So much wrestling to watch. I'm giving the show overall a 5. Again, I thought it was highly enjoyable. With that being said, if you made it here to the end, I know I've mentioned how big of a Cody fan I am and how much I love Cody Rhodes. He is probably my favorite current wrestler. However, I'd be remiss if we didn't give some respect to Roman Reigns. So if you made it to the end, put a 1 in the chat for the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns. Throw your ones up one last time. He deserves it for that run. It was just a great run. Give me a 1 in the chat. And while you're there, smash the like button, share the video, subscribe if you haven't. If you see where it says join, that's how you become a member. Becoming a member definitely helps the channel out. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been my review of WrestleMania 40.